The weekend is almost here, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for another episode of The 10, your favorite Big Ten betting show. I'm your host, Greg Waddell. I am joined today by Doug Kezirian, and today we will take you through every big game in the Big Ten Conference. Now the conference play is here. We'll present you with our full cards of bets for the entire weekend, and hopefully we'll help you make some money along the way. Reminder, this is a show brought to you by the Bet Rivers Sports Network, part of College Sports Rush, where we have a pretty awesome promotion for you right now. College football squares with Bet Rivers. Bettors who place college football same-game parlays of qualifying amounts will earn weekly CFB squares for a chance at big prizes. You see the banner in front of you right now. Go take advantage. You're not going to want to miss out. Doug, we got a lot to get to today, so we're going to jump right in to the first game on our card here for week 4. It is Maryland at Wisconsin. What are your thoughts?
The line move, I understand, despite Whiskey getting manhandled by Alabama last week. It's moved from 7 to 10. It makes sense. Camp Randall's a tough place to play, all that good stuff. Maryland hasn't really played anyone. And you got a true freshman in quarterback Malik Washington making the big trip in the conference play, but I cannot lay double digits. First of all, it's probably going to be Danny O'Neal. Looks like Billy Edwards is healthier with that knee sprain, but not going to suit up either way. I think Loxley's going to have his guys ready. I know Maryland's been a little bit of a paper tiger, but they were never really a tiger. But, a team that was trying to flirt with the top, the middle of the pack in the Big Ten and just didn't really materialize. I think 10's too many. The over-under is pretty low. So getting 10 in this game is tempting, but I don't want to take the bait. I trust the line move here. So this is a pass for me, but in like a pick'em league, I would take the dog if I had to.
Yep, I agree with you. I lean to the Maryland side of things here, particularly given the quarterback questions of what's going to happen for Wisconsin. Reminder, Billy Edwards, former Maryland quarterback, so there could be some reasons for him to try and gut out playing if he is questionable here, but it's a stay away from me. There's not enough to like about Wisconsin to take them laying 10 against anybody right now. There's not enough to like about Maryland to take them with 10 points against anybody right now. You could try and play the injury game if you'd like, or maybe even play the under. I wouldn't hate that as a play, but there is much more value on the board, which takes us to our second game where I have a feeling you may have some value for us. It is a rivalry game out west. Oregon State taking on the Oregon Ducks, the number 6 team in the country. You see a huge spread here. Dan Lanning's team favored by 35.5. Our total at 56. What are we thinking?
Oh, man, this is going to take a strong stomach, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Beavers and the points. Obviously, over 35. It's 6 scores at 35.5. I guess you never know with Oregon maybe going for 2, although this isn't the Chip Kelly days. But really, this comes down to playing amateur psychologist on a couple fronts and then also just trusting history of college football betting. But if you look at Oregon State, they've been terrible, truly terrible. They were trailing 45-0 at Texas Tech last week, and the Red Raiders were one of my best bets. I've actually been fading the Beavers every single week, and I haven't really been talking about it much with some other bettors I talk to because I want this one to stay below the radar because they're such a bad team. Malik Murphy had a QBR of 32.4 last week. The defense gave up 601 total yards to Texas Tech. So why on earth would I be grabbing the points here? Well, it's a rivalry game, but obviously with a spread this big, you really do throw out the records. But then you also throw out anything. It's just a really tough spot. The Ducks have to go to Happy Valley next week and play Penn State in a whiteout game. I don't think Dan Lanning's going to run up the score here. I don't think it's much of a rivalry right now. Oregon State doesn't even have a conference right now. Dan Lanning doesn't have to worry about the little brother of Oregon State. So he just wants to get out of that game without injury. And that's what we discussed last week against Northwestern, right? He was playing the scrubs, and Northwestern scored back-to-back touchdowns late. And frankly, that's what Texas Tech did allowed with Oregon State. The key for me is Murphy last week down 45-0, right? Midway through the fourth, he's still in the game because he is somewhat competent. Former Duke quarterback. He has ability and he can throw the ball. So against like the reserves, I think this can backdoor if they don't hang around. Just for perspective, last year was 49-14, I believe was the game. It was the score in last year's game. So 35.5, given that Oregon doesn't really care. Noon kickoff out west. I don't know what I'm getting at Oregon State, but I mean, how many points are the Ducks going to score to cover 35.5 in a game where they're going to pull the starters and worry about next week? And maybe the rivalry game gives the Beavers a little intensity. I wouldn't bet Oregon State first half. I know that, but I got to grab the 35.5 points. It's an official play for me.
Wow. Okay. I did not expect this, but I'm into it. I mean, amateur psychologist, I think that's what you've got to do. And you laid out the case very nicely. Malik Murphy is absolutely a backdoor cover kind of quarterback. He's a guy with talent that can get you 14 late points, as evidenced by last week. The only question I would have, you kind of said, okay, how badly does Oregon want to beat them? That's really the only question to answer here. And I would point out, I was looking it up as you went through this. Dan Lanning's team last season did not beat anybody by 36. He had a couple 35-point wins, but it was right on the number at 35. So you kind of got to want to give it to somebody to beat them by 6 touchdowns. And given the fact that they do go to Happy Valley next week, I would assume they're not doing it with the first string in the second half of this game. My only question would be, is Oregon State bad enough that Oregon coasting, not trying to beat them by as much as they can, is actually a 42-point win instead of a 63-point
they are bad
win.
enough. They are. But I think the refs help out sometimes in these games, like a bogus PI. I mean, it happens in the NFL too.
Sure.
It's just a lot of points.
It's a big number. It's a big number. And like we said, Malik Murphy is a quarterback who can trim down a big number late. So I definitely understand the strategy there. I don't think I'm bold or brave enough to add it to my card, but I am smart enough to take Oregon off of my card after listening to your analysis. So that's what I'll do. Let's move on. Another big time game here this weekend that will have a lot of eyeballs on it. It's the Michigan Wolverines against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Dylan Raiola with a big opportunity here to get Matt Rule one of his first marquee victories as Nebraska's head coach. This is a Nebraska team that I think believes they can be a contender in this conference. This is a Michigan team with a little bit of an early back against the wall game after how they fell at Oklahoma. Michigan, a 2-point favorite on the road here, and our total's at 47. What are we thinking?
Yeah, this is tough. I think Michigan gets the win, but we in sports betting, we always have apprehension to something that if it hasn't happened, we think it will never happen, whether that's subconscious or conscious. I feel like everyone's really gun shy to trust something that hasn't occurred, right? I mean, even going back in sports history, when you think about Virginia, oh, they can't win. Well, the year after they lost as a 1 seed to a 16 seed, they won it all. Phil Mickelson never could get over the hump, but then he got over the hump and won some majors, right? I think this could be the year where Matt Rule gets Nebraska and they actually put it all together. We saw it against Cincinnati that they actually eked out a close game, although it was an ill-advised throw by the Bearcats. This could be a game where Nebraska gets over the hump and finally starts winning more close games. I actually like the Huskers in a teaser, and I talked about this in the opener with Ohio State and Texas. You don't really want to make a habit of betting teasers in college football because the line value is not really that great. But when you have low over-unders, meaning points are at a premium, and if it's a fixed price on a 6-point two-leg teaser or something like that, and the juice is lower in college football, then it does give you something to consider. So a Michigan-Nebraska game is kind of teaser-ish sort of range. Maybe tease it to Rutgers, so you get over the 7 there in that game tonight, something like that. But that's the only way. Look, it's a coin flip game. I don't see an edge. I'm passing. I'm not laying -110 on a coin flip game that I have no sort of edge on. But teaser, you could get me interested.
Are you teasing me, Doug? Is that what we're doing? You're teasing me a little bit here. That's okay with me. Yeah, look, I like the teaser shout. I really do, because I don't know what to do with this game. I think it's right on the number for me. I think Michigan should be a slight favorite. I think Michigan should win the football game. And I did speak on this a little bit in our first episode of the week, but to me, the question here will be, how much do they run Bryce Underwood? And he had great success in their last non-conference game without Sharon Moore running the show. When Sharon was on the sidelines, they did not want to show any of this. Were they just saving him for this type of game? I don't know. Now it's on tape. Now Nebraska knows he can do it. I almost wish they didn't run him last week. So, look, Nebraska got gashed by Desmond Ridder. I do think Underwood's legs could be a factor in this game. On the flip side, John Mateer, Oklahoma, was the story against Michigan. He killed Michigan on the ground with his legs. Dylan Raiola can't do that. He wants to sit in the pocket. I do think Michigan's defense will be able to get to Raiola a little bit. So it's a lean to the Wolverines for me. The one thing that just holds me back from putting it to the card here is that I think Nebraska, really, we haven't seen them with a big primetime home football game in the last year. I mean, every big game on Nebraska's schedule was on the road last season. When they were at home with a big game feel, I mean, they blitzed Colorado early in the season last year. So I do think this is going to be a big time environment game. I didn't love how Bryce Underwood looked in his first big time environment game. And it's enough to make me uneasy about it. I think Michigan should win. I don't think there's much value in the number. So I am going to pass and keep it off my card, as much as I wish I could talk myself into the Wolverines. Let's move into a game that you and I were very aligned on earlier this week. We'll see if anything changes. It is Purdue on the road in South Bend against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Marcus Freeman's team needs a statement victory here. Purdue vibes are high. Barry Odom kept it competitive against USC in a sloppy, wet football game at home for Purdue. Our total's 52.5 here. Notre Dame favored by 26 points. Where are we going?
So I still like the Irish, but I'm also kind of warming up to the over here. Purdue could move the ball a little bit last week against USC, and the Irish obviously have great secondary, but really on the outside and over the middle, their opportunities. The Boilermakers much more competent than they were a year ago. I just think it's a giant flat spot for Purdue. So I might split it up here with Notre Dame and also a Notre Dame team total. I think they're just going to open up a can here against Purdue. It's just a really bad spot. In fact, um, the Irish were in this spot, excuse me, Purdue was in this spot a year ago and just caught everyone was betting Purdue plus the points a year ago because the Irish had just lost. And it did not go well. Let's say it did not go well for Purdue. I'm calling up the score, but it's just a beatdown waiting to happen. Again, last year's Boilermakers team, much more incompetent than this year. This year, this lacked the talent, but it was 66-7 last year. So if you do the quick math, I think this is they're telling you it's what, 40-14 kind of thing, 39-14, 39-13-ish. So I think Notre Dame over 39 team total's also a good play. So I'll split it up with that and Notre Dame minus 26.
This game comes down to two things for me. Number one, what do you think of Notre Dame? I think very highly of them. They're about as highly as I could possibly think of an 0-2 team. I mean, they've lost 2 games to 2 legitimate top 10 opponents by 4 combined points. Do we look at Notre Dame completely differently if that 4th down touchdown doesn't go against them? And it was a great play from Texas A&M, just an awesome throw, awesome catch. Didn't think they could cover it any better, quite frankly. So I haven't really changed my opinion of Notre Dame, and I think this is a team that can win 10 straight games and get to the college football playoff. It's got to start on the right foot, though. And I think it's got to start with a blowout win if you're Marcus Freeman, not a limp to the finish line 17-point win at home. I'm not overly impressed with Purdue. That's the other side of this game for me. They did keep it competitive, and they're getting a lot of narrative love from the media and their fan base right now just because the bar was so low from Ryan Walters. But I really thought a huge reason why they were hanging around in that USC game was an apathetic approach from the USC defense in the second half. I mean, I don't blame them either. They're halfway across the country after a 3-hour weather delay in a game that they were up 20 points in the middle of the second quarter in. It's one of those games for me where I think USC took the foot off the gas. They've been a pretty horrible road team. And Ryan Brown tried to take advantage, but still was sloppy in the red zone in a game that could have been closer for Purdue. So I don't think they're going to have any sort of breathing room against a Notre Dame defense the way they did against a USC defense in the second half. To me, this is a total beatdown. I'm just going to lay the points with Notre Dame and expect them to win this game very, very comfortably. Let's move to what I consider the game of the week in the entire sport here. It is Illinois and Indiana, and we told you earlier this week, this line's been moving. It's been strange to say the least, almost suspiciously so. Well, this afternoon, we finally got our answer on why this line has been moving. Illinois defensive back star Scott is questionable, doubtful for this game is the latest report on this. This has moved all the way from -4 for the Hoosiers at home all the way up to -6, -6.5, depending on where you're looking. At Bet Rivers, we've got it Indiana -6 right now. The total is 53 points. At least we have an explanation for the movement beyond why the public loves Indiana. But I was heavy on the Illini earlier this week, and I don't know what to do given the injury status right now. Doug, help me make sense of this.
I'm going to try, but it doesn't really make sense. I would say that Indiana's explosive ability is a part of the equation, and Zignetti has talked the talk, right? I think he's rewarded backers. I think he has a swagger, and he's backed it up. You know, he obviously opened up a can in the last game, and Illinois. I think people are just reluctant on them a little bit, right? They haven't sort of been this team that can just absolutely crush teams like Indiana. But again, that's all like opponent base. Like they've won the tight games. They've done fine. Like won last year 5 times as an underdog. They're coming off a beatdown of Western Michigan when everyone was fading them because it was off the big win of Duke. Now that score was a little misleading, but still they went to Duke and beat them. Now Duke has since been, even though sharp money has come on the Blue Devils seemingly every week, and they certainly were on that game. I'm stunned by this. I think it's too many points. If this were like a USC having to come east, like we'll see next week against Illinois, then I could see it. But these are traditional game, traditional matchup. Feels like too many points. I mean, frankly, I'm kind of hoping Illinois gets waxed or at least dominated, because I'd like to bet the Illini next week against the Trojans, where I think it would be a good spot to fade Lincoln Riley and this West Coast team. And I just feel like they're going to hit their wall eventually. And look, they didn't cover last week against Purdue. I think it's going to be a similar situation like that, but I can't lay the points here. This is a tough test for IU, only because they've blown out teams and then they've kind of hung around the teams where they've lost. The question is, can they win a game where they're only favored by 6 and then land 6 or something, or not lose? I think we're going to learn about Zignetti and this, modern day Hoosiers, but I can't lay the lumber, but I have to respect the line movement.
Yeah, at least I understand it, right? Earlier this week, I was like, this just feels the opposite of where this should be going for me. I can't believe Illinois is catching a field goal, let alone 4.5 up to 5. Look, I laid out the case for Illinois earlier this week. I had it as my best bet of the week, and the Scott injury is enough to probably reclassify it. I still am going to play Illinois. I just think this number is huge. I mean, Scott is incredible. Don't get me wrong. Xavier Scott, he's going to be an NFL defensive back. He's very talented. He's going to take on the assignment of Indiana's best receiver, who I do expect to have a huge game if Scott misses this game. However, Illinois got so much elsewhere. They're not a one-trick pony. This isn't, I don't know. It's not just one guy that you got to worry about, and he's a lockdown corner. This offense has been lights out. They did return 16 starters from last year's team, so okay. What are the other 15 starters got? Brett Bielema has been incredible in big games in the last calendar year. They went 5-1 against the spread against ranked opponents last year, and they won their bowl game against South Carolina in a pissed-off spot. I think this is a similar type game. Back against the wall for an Illinois program that mentally and emotionally feels that this is the year. And say what you want. I think that type of thing matters when you have this many returnees. Indiana, a lot of new faces. Cignetti's always going to have them in the hunt, but Cignetti is also always going to have them unprepared for the best opponents on their schedule. That's how he operates. The evidence is out. 0-3 against the spread against ranked teams last season. Into this year, they're totally untested. So I do expect with the injury to Scott, Indiana's going to lean even more heavy into their passing game. Their leading rusher on the year, BB, is also out for the season. So it's going to come down to how comfortable is Mendoza. And I do expect him to be relatively comfortable now that he can pick on some less experienced Illinois defensive backs. But to me, if this game becomes a shootout, Illinois is good enough offensively to stay in it. 6 points is a ton. I will be playing Illinois to keep this close despite the injury concerns. And I don't hate a look on Illinois money line. Even with Scott out, it's almost 2-1 at Bet Rivers. So I'm playing both. They're both on my card. No longer my best bet of the week, but more on that later. Let's move. We got another rivalry out west here. It is Washington at Washington State, the Apple Cup here. Washington 19.5-point favorites on the road. Washington State's been awful this year. But home dogs are not dogs. They're wolves. I always say it. 53 points is our total. What do you think here, Doug?
And I really wanted to take the Cougs because I think just something is off with this Washington team. I like Damon Williams and everything, but they're just not quite explosive. They're not Oregon light like I thought they would be. But this Wazoo team is terrible. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a rotten apple cup, but I think Washington's going to be competent this year. I think the spot also favors the Huskies. I think Damon Williams has a chance with the right, he has a good coaching and everything with Jed Fish. He's going to look much better with 2 weeks of practice and a little bit more game experience under his belt coming off the bye. And yes, much like we were talking with Oregon, there's a big game next week. The Huskies host Ohio State. But I don't think they're good enough to look past Wazoo. A little money's coming on the Cougars, moved it down to where it is now, but I kind of want to lay it. I just think Washington State's so bad. I mean, they beat Idaho 13-10. This is not Gardner Minshew, Washington State, where they can sling it around and everything. They're limited, and Washington could pull away here. It's almost a bet. I might get there by kickoff, but night game at the Palouse, maybe it keeps me off it, but I think Washington can open up a can here. They have so much explosion compared to Washington State. I just don't know what I'm getting with the Cougs. This is not a team that has that fun offense where they can sling it around and like they're not good. They just got waxed by North Texas 59-10. Now, North Texas is pretty good, but still, it's North Texas, and Washington should kill them. But there's just been something a little off with this Huskies team. I'm just not quite ready. I think I'll get there by kickoff, but that's at least my apprehension.
Yeah. No, this is not Jake Dickert and Cam Ward at Washington State anymore. That North Texas beatdown was an unprecedented beatdown, I think, for a program that, has the history. It's not a crazy history, but they're Washington State, right? It used to be a Pac-12 school. They don't lose to North Texas 59-10. This version does, and it's the same version we saw against Idaho. They were terrible. I totally agree with your scout here. If Washington was the team we hoped they would be in the preseason episode of this show, I think we are running to play them at minus 19.5 here, even though it's a look ahead spot. The question is, do we believe that team is still in there? Man, visually it hasn't looked like it, but at the same time, they've only played 2 games. Can you really blame them for a sleepy start to the season against Colorado State and UC Davis? I mean, I do think they have such a talent advantage here that, coming off an extra week of rest in a game that is theoretically a game you should care about, it's the Apple Cup. I hope we see Washington at their best. This is a game, it's late in the day. If we're rolling, I think you add it to the card. It's not my favorite play of the day, but if you're feeling good, I would not hate adding Washington to cover this line late in the day. So that's how I'm going to play it, and I think you're with me. One more that we want to go to here. It's Michigan State making their first road trip of the season. Jonathan Smith and Aiden Childs, both West Coast guys, a homecoming of sorts, to Hollywood to take on Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans. Maeva has been prolific this season, but this is a big number. USC minus 17.5 at home. Our total 54.5. Feels a little high to me with the eye test on the total, but who knows? Maybe there's some points coming at 11 p.m. Eastern time here, by the way. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, the old bailout game, although Hawaii does have a home game on Saturday, so not quite the late kickoff. I like the over still. I kind of was leaning that way. I think USC's offensive and defensive lines are better than we've seen the recent couple years. The tackling's better. I mean, a couple years ago, they led the Pac-12 in missed tackles, which is not something you want to do. I do think Sparty has enough firepower. It's kind of two ways to look at it. They have enough firepower to get some points and get this over the total, or they have enough firepower to make this a rock fight, meaning they'll get a couple first downs and punt, and then this thing goes way under the total. I just think USC is so explosive. I think Lincoln Riley knows what he's doing with offense. I think he loves padding the stats in September. I don't think they're going to be comfortable, even if they're up 20-24, because he's blown leads in the past, back when he had Caleb Williams even. So I think it's going to be a kind of a desire to make this a track meet. And I think Michigan State will be ready to play with them. Like, they'll be wanting to throw. You know, I don't think this is a fish out of water with Sparty. Their coach certainly knows what's going on with USC. I think we'll see some points here. I think this could be a 40-20 game, one of those situations. It's a lot of points, but it's not at times when you factor in the Trojans.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of points from USC for sure. The question for me is, can Childs keep Michigan State in it? Now, he's looked great. I mean, he's taken the step forward that Michigan State fans were praying he would after a very erratic first season under center last year. He's been taking care of the football. He's been better downfield, quick reads, all these things. Now, the big issue for Michigan State here, their top target, Child's favorite target, Nick Marsh, one of the best receivers in the country, questionable for this game, banged up, not practicing really. This is one of those spots where I think he might tough it out, but you have no idea. Is he 20%? Is he 50%? Is he 100%? It's going to be roll the dice, and let's find out after the first drive. Look, I will say this. That Boston College win for Michigan State at the time felt like a step forward for the program. Then you fast forward a week and you watch Boston College go, yes, way out west off an emotional high, but lose to Stanford, who has a stopgap head coach and has looked terrible. I think it's real ominous here for the Spartans. I don't know that this team has taken the step forward that their 3-0 record feels like they have. This defense is still in big trouble, in my opinion. They were getting gashed in the second half by Youngstown State at home last week. I don't think they can get any pressure on any quarterback, let alone Jaden Maeva, who you give him 3 seconds in the pocket, he is going to find his 5-star receivers all over the field. I think USC is going to put 40, maybe 50 points on the board in this game, and it all comes down to what does Aiden Childs do to keep up with it. I'm confident he can keep up for a half. I'm not confident that if Michigan State gets down 2 or 3 scores, that's going to last forever, especially in a homecoming game where Childs is going to feel the pressure to play hero ball. Kind of feels like maybe the first game of the year where his consistency goes away and we see that erratic arm that led to a lot of interceptions last year. So I actually like you. If you're leaning over here, Doug, I think I'm with you. USC can help you big time there, but I just love USC to cover this number. I think this is a 24+ point win. I also love USC first half -9.5. I'll be stunned if they're not going into the break up 2 scores in this game. All right, we've made it through our huge Big Ten card here. Let's wrap the show with our best bet each for the week. What are you going to go with?
I'm going to lay it with Notre Dame. I was tempted to take the Beavers, but I'll lay it with Notre Dame. I think they're going to have to get right. And to your point from earlier, if they still want to get in the playoff mix, they can't be winning by 17. They're going to have to send a message. They got a great leader in Marcus Freeman. He knows the score. I do like Barry Odom. I do think he's competent, but it's a really tough spot. It won't be as easy as last year's beatdown, but I think they cover this number. So I'll lay the big one with the Irish.
I love that. That is my second favorite play of the week. For the sake of differentiation, I'll give you my first, and I'm going to take USC to cover. I've spoken on it earlier this week on this show, but USC in all of their games against non-West Coast Big Ten teams since joining the conference, the home team is covered. 9-0 against the spread in those games. USC at home always covers in this league. When they're on the road, they never cover in this league. I think that continues in a very tough spot for Michigan State. So Doug's got Notre Dame to win big. I've got USC to win big. And reminder, I think we both liked Illinois, if not for the injury questions here. Ultimately, we'll stay away from calling it a best bet, but it's on my card at +6, and we'll roll the dice and see what happens. Thank you, Doug, as always. It's great to get your insights 2 times a week on the 10. Thank you to our team behind the scenes as well. Thank you to you for watching the show. We will be back next week as well, every Wednesday and Friday, to break down all things Big Ten betting. Make sure that you get the College Football Squares promotion as well. You don't want to miss it. Gamble responsibly with Bet Rivers. Thank you for watching. Good luck this weekend. We'll see you all next week.